The corner booth at Cafe Meridian had always been Emma Chen's favorite spot, until tonight, when it became the setting for what might be the worst blind date of her life. Across from her sat Brandon Walsh, a corporate attorney who'd spent the last 45 minutes talking about himself without pause. His mouth moved constantly, forming words Emma could read on his lips about his corner office, his luxury condo in Tribeca, his recent promotion, his expensive gym membership, his imported car. Emma's best friend Maya sat beside her, dutifully interpreting Brandon's monologue into sign language, though the enthusiasm had drained from Maya's hands about 20 minutes ago. Even Maya, eternal optimist and relentless matchmaker, couldn't make Brandon interesting. He's still talking about his car. Maya signed with barely concealed exhaustion, her face maintaining a polite smile for Brandon's benefit. Emma nodded, sipping her now cold coffee and trying to look engaged. This was the fourth blind date Maya had arranged in 2 months, and somehow each one was worse than the last. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Brandon finally paused to drink his espresso, and Maya seized the opportunity. Emma works with deaf children at the Riverside Center, she said aloud while signing simultaneously. It's really amazing work. Oh, that's nice, Brandon said, his eyes sliding over Emma without real interest. Must be rewarding. Anyway, as I was saying about the merger case I'm working on. And he was off again, diving into legal jargon that Emma couldn't have cared less about even if she could hear it. She watched his lips move, his hands gesture emphatically, his entire body language screaming that he was far more interested in his own voice than anything she might have to say. Maya's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it, and her eyes widened. Emergency at work, she signed to Emma, genuine distress crossing her face. The event coordinator quit, and tomorrow's fundraiser is a disaster. I have to go handle it right now. Emma's heart sank. Being left alone with Brandon for even 5 more minutes sounded like torture, but she could see the panic in Maya's eyes. Her friend managed events for a nonprofit, and last-minute crises were unfortunately common. Go, Emma signed. I'll be fine. Are you sure? Maya's hands hesitated. I can stay if... Go. I'm a grown woman. I can handle one boring date. Maya squeezed Emma's hand gratefully, then turned to Brandon with an apologetic smile. I'm so sorry. There's an emergency at work. I have to run. You two keep getting to know each other. Before either could protest, Maya grabbed her coat and rushed out of the cafe, leaving Emma alone with Brandon and the awkward reality of communicating without an interpreter. Brandon blinked at Maya's retreating form, then turned back to Emma with visible uncertainty. The confident flow of his monologue had dried up the moment he realized he'd actually have to communicate directly with her. So, he said slowly, over-enunciating in that way hearing people often did when they suddenly remembered she was deaf. Can you read lips? Yes, Emma said, keeping her voice level. I can read lips, and I can speak. I've been doing both since I was 3. Oh, good. That's good. Brandon shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. He pulled out his phone, typed something, then showed her the screen. Do you want another coffee? Emma bit back a sigh. He was typing to her. As if she couldn't communicate perfectly well through speech and lip reading. I'm fine, thank you, she said aloud. Brandon nodded, put his phone away, and then silence descended. The easy monologue had evaporated, replaced by the painful quiet of 2 people with nothing to say to each other. Emma glanced around the cafe, looking for escape routes or at least distraction. The dinner crowd had thinned out, leaving mostly couples and a few solo patrons with laptops. Her eyes swept past the booth behind Brandon, then returned with sudden interest. A man sat alone, facing her direction, though his attention appeared focused on the tablet in front of him. He was probably in his mid-30s, with dark hair and sharp features that suggested Italian heritage. He wore an expensive charcoal suit, the jacket draped over the booth beside him, his white shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. Everything about him radiated controlled power, the way he sat, the way his eyes occasionally scanned the room, the way other patrons seemed to unconsciously give his table a wide berth. But what caught Emma's attention was the deference the staff showed him. The manager had stopped by twice in the 5 minutes she'd been watching, clearly checking if he needed anything. The servers moved around his booth with extra care. Even the busboy seemed nervous when clearing the neighboring table. This wasn't just another customer. This was someone important, someone powerful, and he was close enough that if she'd been having an actual conversation with Brandon, he might have overheard. Not that it mattered, since she was deaf, and Brandon seemed to have forgotten how to form words. Brandon cleared his throat. "I should probably tell you," he said, still over-enunciating. "I have an early meeting tomorrow, so I should head out soon." Relief flooded through Emma. "Of course," she said. "Don't let me keep you." Great. This was nice. The lie was obvious even on his lips. "Maybe we could do this again sometime?" "Maybe," Emma replied, another lie, though hers was kinder. Brandon stood, clearly eager to escape. "I'll call you." He wouldn't. "Tell Maya thanks for setting this up." He grabbed his coat, gave an awkward wave, and practically fled the cafe. The moment he disappeared through the door, Emma let her shoulders slump. She raised her hand to signal the server, ready to order something stronger than coffee, when Maya suddenly reappeared, sliding into the booth with barely suppressed laughter. He ran away so fast. Maya signed, her whole body shaking with amusement. I saw him practically sprinting down the street. "I thought you had an emergency," Emma signed back, suspicion dawning. "I did. The emergency was rescuing you from the world's most boring man." Maya grinned unrepentantly. "I watched through the window. The moment he started typing on his phone to communicate with you, I knew you'd murder me if I didn't come back." Despite herself, Emma laughed. "You're terrible. I'm a good friend." "There's a difference." Maya signaled the server, ordering them both wine. "I'm so sorry." He seemed interesting on paper. Successful, good-looking, stable career. He was also condescending and self-absorbed. Emma signed with emphasis. "And the second you left, he started treating me like I couldn't understand basic English. I saw the phone thing. Mortifying." Maya shook her head. "Okay, new rule, no more blind dates. I'm clearly terrible at this." "You've been saying that since the last disaster. This time I mean it." Maya paused as the server brought their wine. "Unless. I did see someone really attractive walk in about 10 minutes ago. Sitting alone behind where Brandon was. Dark hair, incredible suit. Looks like he could be in the Mafia or something." Emma's eyes automatically flicked to the booth she'd noticed earlier. The man was still there, still focused on his tablet, though something about his posture suggested he was aware of everything happening around him. "Maya, no," Emma signed firmly. "Absolutely not. No more setups, especially not with men who look like they could be in the Mafia. I'm just saying, he's gorgeous. And he keeps glancing over here. He's probably wondering why we're having an animated sign language conversation." Emma deliberately turned her attention back to Maya. "Can we please just have a normal evening? No more matchmaking, no more disaster dates, just wine and complaining about work." "Fine, fine." Maya held up her hands in surrender. "Girls' night. I can do that." They settled into comfortable conversation, Maya signing about the fundraiser chaos, while Emma vented about budget cuts at the children's center. It was easy, familiar, the kind of interaction that had defined their friendship since college. After Maya had thoroughly dissected the incompetent event coordinator situation, she excused herself to the restroom, leaving Emma alone with her wine and her thoughts. This was the moment Emma had been waiting for, the chance to fully express her frustration about the disastrous date without worrying about Maya's feelings. Her friend meant well, but the constant setups were exhausting. Emma's hands lifted, and she began signing to herself, a habit she'd developed years ago. Speaking to herself in her native language, venting in the privacy of signs that no one around her could understand. That was absolutely the last time. She signed emphatically, her face expressing the full frustration her voice never quite captured. I don't care how much Maya wants me settled and happy. Brandon was insufferable. 45 minutes about his car, his job, his apartment, his gym. Not a single question about my work, my life, nothing. And the moment Maya left, he couldn't get out fast enough. Her hands moved faster, the signs flowing with practiced anger. And the typing on his phone? As if I'm some kind of child who can't communicate? I have 2 master's degrees. I run an entire educational program. I'm fluent in 3 languages if you count ASL, English, and Mandarin. But sure, type at me in all caps. Like that's helpful. Emma grabbed her wine glass, taking a long sip before continuing her silent rant. This is exactly why I hate blind dates. Every single one is the same. Either they're weirdly fascinated by my deafness, like it makes me exotic, or they're uncomfortable with it and treat me like I'm broken. Brandon was definitely in the second category. Couldn't wait to escape once he realized he'd have to actually communicate. She set the glass down with more force than intended, the sound vibrating through the table. And Maya keeps trying. Bless her heart. She keeps thinking the next one will be different. But they're never different. They're all the same type. Successful, conventionally attractive, completely self-absorbed men who want a pretty girlfriend, but not an actual partner. I'm so tired of it. Her hands continued moving, the signs growing more emphatic. I should just tell her I'm done. Completely done with dating. I have my work, my kids at the center, my research. I don't need some man who thinks he's doing me a favor by tolerating my disability. I don't need anyone, actually. I'm perfectly fine alone. Emma paused, realizing how bitter she sounded even to herself. She softened slightly, her next signs more contemplative. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe I've gotten too comfortable being alone. Maybe I'm too picky, too defensive, too quick to see problems. Maybe Brandon wasn't that bad, and I'm just looking for reasons to reject everyone. Then she shook her head firmly, signing with renewed conviction. No, Brandon was that bad. He literally ran away the moment Maya left. That's not me being picky. That's him being terrible. She was so absorbed in her signing, so comfortable in the assumption that she was essentially invisible in this moment, that she didn't notice the man from the booth behind where Brandon had been sitting. Didn't see that he'd shifted position slightly, his angle now giving him a clear view of her hands. Didn't realize that his dark eyes tracked every sign with perfect comprehension, his expression shifting from casual interest to focused attention. The next time Maya tries to set me up, I'm going to be completely honest. Emma signed with finality. I'm going to tell her that I appreciate the effort, but I'm not interested in meeting any more men who see my deafness as either a fetish or a flaw. I want someone who sees me as a complete person, someone who doesn't make me feel like I have to prove my worth or overcome some deficit. And if that person doesn't exist, then I'm genuinely happy being single. Her hands finally stilled and she reached for her wine again, satisfied that she'd gotten her true feelings out even if only to herself. The familiar comfort of signing, of expressing herself in her native language without filters or apologies, had taken the edge off her frustration. Maya emerged from the restroom, making her way back to the booth with her phone in hand. The team got the fundraiser under control. She signed as she slid into her seat. Crisis averted. Now we can actually enjoy our wine. Good. Emma signed back, deliberately shifting to lighter topics. Tell me about your sister's wedding plans. Is your mother still trying to control everything? They fell back into easy conversation, laughing about Maya's mother's increasingly elaborate ideas for the wedding, while Maya's sister tried desperately to maintain some control over her own event. What Emma didn't see was the man in the expensive suit settling his bill, his eyes thoughtful as they rested on her one last time before he stood. Didn't notice the way he moved through the cafe with the kind of presence that made other patrons unconsciously step aside. Didn't realize that every word she'd signed had been perfectly understood by someone who'd sat close enough to watch her hands, far enough away that she'd assumed complete privacy. Dante Moretti walked out of Cafe Meridian with his mind already working through possibilities. He'd come to check on one of his legitimate businesses. The cafe was one of several properties his family owned throughout the city. He'd intended to review the month's finances, ensure the manager wasn't skimming, maintain the visibility that kept his operations running smoothly. He hadn't expected to spend the last hour watching a woman systematically dismantle her terrible date through sign language, assuming no one could understand her. His sister Isabella had been deaf since birth. By the time Dante was 10, their entire family was fluent in ASL. It had become their primary language at home, the foundation of how they communicated. Isabella was 30 now, married, living in Boston, deliberately separate from the family business. But the language remained, a skill Dante had never thought to mention in casual conversation because it was simply part of who he was. And tonight, that skill had given him an unexpected window into someone remarkable, Emma Chen. He'd heard the friend say her name. Worked with deaf children. Had 2 master's degrees apparently. Was fluent in 3 languages. Had standards that the unfortunate Brandon had failed to meet spectacularly. Dante slid into the back of the black car waiting at the curb, his driver already pulling into traffic. Back to the house, boss? Vincent asked from the front seat. No, Dante said slowly, his mind still on the woman in the cafe. I need you to find out everything about someone. Emma Chen. Works at the Riverside Children's Center. Vincent's eyes met his in the rearview mirror, knowing better than to ask questions. Yes, sir. Dante looked out the window as the city passed by, his thoughts already several steps ahead. He'd been back in New York for 6 months, taking over the family operations after his father's death, consolidating power, eliminating threats, building the empire his father had started into something that could last generations. In that time, he'd met countless people, allies, enemies, business contacts, women who wanted to get close to power. None of them had interested him beyond their utility. But a deaf woman who thought she was invisible, who signed her frustrations to herself with brutal honesty, who demanded to be seen as a complete person rather than a collection of deficits. That was interesting. That was worth pursuing. Back in the cafe, Emma finished her wine while Maya scrolled through her phone, showing pictures of bridesmaid dress options and asking Emma's opinion. The evening had recovered from its disastrous start, settling into the comfortable rhythm of friendship. I really am sorry about Brandon. Maya signed again, her face genuinely apologetic. I promise. No more setups. You're officially off the market as far as I'm concerned. Thank you. Emma signed with relief. I appreciate you trying, but I think I'm better off focusing on work. You say that now, Maya teased, but wait until the right person comes along. Someone who actually deserves you? Emma smiled but didn't argue. In her experience, the right person was a fantasy, something that worked in movies but rarely in real life. Real life was blind dates with men like Brandon, awkward conversations, and the constant exhaustion of having to prove her worth. She was fine with that, had made peace with it. At least, that's what she told herself as they settled the bill and headed out into the cool evening air. As they walked to Maya's car, Emma didn't look back at the cafe, didn't see the manager making notes on a tablet, didn't realize that her information was already being compiled. She went home to her small apartment in Queens, made tea, and settled in with a book, comfortable in her solitude. She had no idea that across the city, in a mansion in Greenwich Village, a very dangerous man was reading a comprehensive file about her life while planning their next meeting. And when they met again, and they would meet again, Emma Chen's carefully controlled world was going to become very complicated very quickly. Emma spent the next 3 days trying to forget about the disastrous blind date, throwing herself into work at the Riverside Children's Center with the kind of focus that usually helped her avoid thinking about her personal life. Monday morning brought the usual chaos. 17 deaf children between ages 5 and 12, all needing attention, instruction, and the kind of patience that came naturally to Emma but exhausted most people by lunchtime. She was in the middle of teaching a lesson on advanced vocabulary, her hands moving through signs while her students watched with varying degrees of attention, when the center's director, Margaret Hayes, appeared in the doorway. "Can I borrow you for a moment?" Margaret signed, her expression unusually serious. Emma nodded, asking her assistant teacher to take over before following Margaret down the hallway to her office. "We have a visitor." Margaret signed once the door closed behind them, a potential major donor. "He called this morning asking for a tour of the facility and specifically requested to meet with you." "Me?" Emma's hands formed the sign with confusion. "Why would a donor want to meet with me specifically?" "He said he was impressed by your work and wanted to discuss the program directly with the person running it." Margaret's expression turned hopeful. "Emma, we desperately need funding. The city cut our budget again, and we're looking at having to reduce staff if we can't find private donors. This man could be the answer we need." Emma understood the unspoken pressure. The center was always one budget cut away from closure, always scrambling for grants and donations to keep operating. If this donor was serious, she needed to make a good impression. "When does he want to tour?" "He's here now." Waiting in the conference room. Emma glanced down at her casual clothes, jeans and a sweater, practical for working with children but hardly professional. "I'm not exactly dressed for meeting donors." "You look fine. You look like someone who actually works with the kids, which is more authentic than a suit." Margaret squeezed her arm. "Just be yourself. Show him what we do here and why it matters." Emma took a breath, centered herself, and followed Margaret to the conference room. The moment she walked through the door, her steps faltered. Dante Moretti stood at the window, looking out at the children's playground, his back to the door. He wore another expensive suit, this one charcoal gray, and even from behind, he radiated the same controlled power she'd noticed at the cafe. What was he doing here? He turned as they entered, and his dark eyes found Emma immediately. Something flickered in his expression, recognition certainly, but also something else she couldn't quite read. "Mr. Moretti," Margaret said aloud while signing, "this is Emma Chen, our lead educational specialist and ASL instructor." "Ms. Chen," Dante said, extending his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you." His grip was firm, warm, and lasted just a fraction longer than professional courtesy required. Emma's mind raced. This couldn't be a coincidence. He'd been at the cafe 3 days ago, close enough to watch her conversation with Maya, and now he was here, at her workplace, claiming to be a potential donor? "Mr. Moretti has expressed interest in supporting our deaf education programs," Margaret signed, oblivious to Emma's internal panic. "I was hoping you could give him a tour and explain our curriculum." Emma forced herself to focus, to push past the coincidence, and treat this like what it appeared to be, a professional interaction with a potential benefactor. "Of course," she said aloud, keeping her voice steady. "I'd be happy to show you our facilities." Margaret excused herself, leaving Emma alone with Dante. The moment the door closed, the dynamic in the room shifted. Dante's formal posture relaxed slightly, and when he looked at her now, there was a hint of amusement in his dark eyes. "You're wondering why I'm here," he said, his voice low and controlled. "The thought crossed my mind," Emma replied carefully. "It's quite a coincidence. Meeting you twice, in 1 week. It's not a coincidence." Dante's directness caught her off guard. "I was at Cafe Meridian on Friday. I saw you there with your friend and your date." Emma's stomach dropped. He'd been there. Had he overheard her complaining to Maya? Had he seen Brandon's awkward exit? "I own the cafe," Dante continued. "I was there reviewing the month's finances, but I ended up staying longer than intended because I witnessed the most brutally honest rejection I've ever seen." He knew. Somehow he knew about her conversation, about her frustrations, about... Dante's hands moved, forming signs with the same fluid precision she'd seen at the cafe, though she hadn't understood the significance then. "You were signing to yourself?" He signed, his expression serious now. "About the terrible date. About being tired of men who either fetishize your deafness or treat it like a flaw. About wanting someone who sees you as a complete person." The blood drained from Emma's face. He could sign. He'd understood everything she'd said, every frustrated complaint she'd vented thinking she was completely private. "Oh God," she whispered, mortification flooding through her. "My sister is deaf," Dante signed, switching fully to ASL now. "Has been since birth. I've been fluent in sign language since I was 10. So when you were signing to yourself on Friday, thinking no one could understand you, I understood every word." Emma wanted to disappear, wanted to rewind time and never go to that cafe, never vent her frustrations in what she'd thought was the privacy of her own language. "I am so sorry," she signed, her hands trembling. "That was incredibly rude. I didn't mean... I shouldn't have... Don't apologize." Dante's signs were firm. "You were being honest with yourself. There's nothing wrong with that. But you heard everything. About the date, about my frustrations with Maya's matchmaking, about wanting someone who sees you as a complete person instead of a collection of deficits." Dante's expression softened. "Yes, I heard that too." Emma sat down in one of the conference room chairs, her legs suddenly unsteady. "So you came here because... what? You felt sorry for me? You wanted to prove you're not like Brandon?" "I came here because you interested me." Dante sat across from her, his posture relaxed, but his attention completely focused on her. "In my world, I meet a lot of people. Most of them are performing, trying to impress me or use me or get something from me. But you, signing to yourself, being brutally honest when you thought no one was watching, that was real. That was interesting. So you tracked down where I work and showed up pretending to be a donor?" Emma's hands moved with sharp emphasis. "That's not interesting. That's concerning." "I am a potential donor," Dante corrected. "Your center needs funding. I have resources. The fact that I'm also personally interested in you doesn't make the professional connection invalid." Emma studied him carefully, trying to reconcile the man in front of her with the image she'd built in her mind. At the cafe, she'd pegged him as dangerous, powerful, possibly connected to organized crime based on how people treated him. Nothing she was seeing now contradicted that assessment. "Who are you, really?" she signed. "And don't tell me you just own a cafe. I saw how people treated you on Friday. That wasn't respect for a restaurant owner. That was fear." Dante's expression turned appreciative. "You don't miss much, do you? Answer the question." He leaned back in his chair, considering her. "My family has business interests throughout the city. Some of those interests are completely legitimate. Restaurants, import companies, real estate. Some are less conventional. You're connected to organized crime. I'm connected to a lot of things. Dante's hands moved through the signs with careful precision. But what I'm offering your center is legitimate money from legitimate sources. The educational foundation my family runs has been supporting children's programs for 20 years. Your center qualifies for that funding. Why should I believe you? Because you can verify everything I'm telling you. The foundation is public record. Our donations are documented. The center's director can check our credentials. He paused. And because despite what you might think, I don't lie to people I respect. Emma wanted to argue, to maintain her skepticism, but something in his directness made her pause. He wasn't trying to charm her or win her over with smooth words. He was stating facts and letting her decide. Even if the donation is legitimate, she signed slowly. You're still here for personal reasons. You're still interested in me because you overheard private thoughts I never intended anyone to understand. Yes, Dante agreed simply. Is that so different from being interested in someone because of a conversation you overheard at a party? Or because you liked how they handled a difficult situation? I saw who you are when you thought no one was watching. That told me more about your character than any carefully constructed first impression could. He had a point, though Emma was reluctant to admit it. Can I show you the center? She signed, needing to move, to do something other than sit under the intensity of his gaze. If you're serious about the donation, you should see what your money would support. I'd like that. Emma led him through the facility, explaining their programs as they walked. She showed him the classrooms where children learned ASL and written English simultaneously, the therapy rooms where speech pathologists worked with kids whose parents wanted them to develop verbal skills, the computer lab with software designed specifically for deaf education. Dante asked intelligent questions, his signs flowing naturally as they communicated. He wanted to know about student-teacher ratios, curriculum development, how they handled children from non-signing families. His interest seemed genuine, not performed. When they reached Emma's classroom, her students were at recess, but the room itself told a story, walls covered with student artwork and vocabulary posters, shelves lined with books in both English and ASL, a smartboard displaying the day's lesson plan. This is where the magic happens, Emma signed, allowing herself a small smile. Where kids who've been struggling to communicate suddenly find their voice through sign language. Tell me about them, Dante signed, gesturing to the photos on her bulletin board. Your students. Emma found herself relaxing as she signed about each child. 7-year-old Marcus, who'd been completely nonverbal until he learned ASL and now couldn't stop signing. 10-year-old Lily, whose hearing parents had refused to learn sign language until they saw how their daughter bloomed at the center. 5-year-old James, recently diagnosed with profound deafness and just beginning his language journey. Dante listened with complete attention, his questions revealing genuine understanding of the challenges deaf children faced. You really care about them, he signed. It's more than just a job for you. They deserve someone who cares, Emma replied. Most of them have spent their whole lives being told they're broken or limited. Here, they learn they're not. They learn they're part of a community, a culture, a language that's beautiful and complete. Something shifted in Dante's expression, a warmth that transformed his severe features. My sister Isabella felt the same way about the deaf school she attended. He signed. It was the first place she felt like she belonged instead of being the different one. Is she still in New York? Boston. She's a teacher there, actually. Deaf education, like you. She's been trying to convince me to support programs like this for years. He smiled slightly. She's going to be insufferable when I tell her I finally listened. They finished the tour in Margaret's office, where Dante reviewed the center's budget and funding needs with the kind of financial acumen that suggested he did this regularly. By the time he left, he'd committed to a donation that would cover the center's shortfall for the entire year, with potential for continued support if they met certain educational benchmarks. Margaret was practically glowing when she walked Dante to the door, thanking him profusely while Emma hung back, still processing everything that had happened. Before leaving, Dante turned back to Emma. "I'd like to take you to dinner," he said aloud, then signed, "Not a blind date, not a setup, just two people who can actually communicate having a conversation." Emma should have said no. Should have maintained professional boundaries, especially now that he was a donor to her workplace. Should have remembered that he was clearly involved in dangerous business, that getting close to him was probably a terrible idea. But she found herself signing, "When?" "Tomorrow night. I'll pick you up at 7. He pulled out his phone. "I need your address." Emma hesitated only a moment before giving it to him. This was foolish, reckless, completely against her better judgment. But as she watched him leave, moving through the center with that same controlled power that made people unconsciously step aside, she couldn't bring herself to regret it. The next evening, Emma changed clothes 4 times before settling on a deep blue dress that was elegant without being too formal. She'd pulled her hair back, added small silver earrings, and was currently staring at her reflection, wondering what she was doing. Dating a man who was almost certainly connected to organized crime. A man who'd essentially tracked her down after overhearing private thoughts. A man who made her pulse race and her common sense evaporate. This was a terrible idea. The knock on her door came at exactly 7. Emma checked the peephole and saw Dante waiting in the hallway, holding a bouquet of white lilies. She opened the door and his eyes swept over her once, appreciation clear in his expression. "You look beautiful," he said, offering her the flowers. "Thank you." Emma took the lilies, breathing in their subtle fragrance. "These are lovely." "Ready?" He signed while she put the flowers in water. "As I'll ever be," she signed back, grabbing her coat. The restaurant Dante took her to was in Little Italy, a small family-owned place that clearly knew him well. The owner greeted him in Italian, embracing him warmly before leading them to a private table in the back. "This is one of my favorite places," Dante signed as they settled into their seats. "The food is excellent, and they understand the value of privacy." "Do you need a lot of privacy in your life?" Emma signed, watching him carefully. "More than most people," he admitted. "My family's business requires discretion." The waiter brought wine and bread, and for the first part of the meal, they talked about safe topics. The center's programs, Dante's sister in Boston, Emma's education, his family's legitimate businesses. But as the main course arrived, Emma decided she needed honesty more than safety. "I need you to tell me the truth," she signed, setting down her fork. "About who you really are, what your family really does. Because I can't do this, whatever this is, without knowing what I'm getting into." Dante studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Fair enough." He explained in careful signs about his family's history. His grandfather coming from Sicily with nothing, building a network of businesses, some legal, some not. His father expanding the empire, gaining power and territory through methods that didn't bear close examination. Dante inheriting it all when his father died 6 months ago. "I won't lie to you about what I am," he signed. "My family is connected to organized crime. We have legitimate businesses, restaurants, imports, real estate, but we also have operations that exist in gray areas. Protection, gambling, other things I won't detail over dinner." "Why are you telling me this?" Emma signed, her heart racing. "Most people in your position would lie, because you asked for the truth, and because I don't want to build anything with you on deception." His dark eyes held hers steadily. "You can walk away right now. I'll understand. I'll make sure the center still gets its funding. But if you stay, if you decide you want to explore this connection between us, You deserve to know what you're choosing. Emma's hands trembled slightly as she signed. This is insane. I should run. Everything logical tells me to run. But you're not running. No, she admitted. I'm not. Why not? Emma considered the question carefully before answering. Because you see me, not my deafness, not some image of who you think I should be. You see me as a complete person. And because you're being honest when you could easily lie. And because... She paused, then continued with complete honesty. Because I've spent my whole life being careful and safe and doing what I'm supposed to do. And maybe I'm tired of that. Maybe I want to see what happens if I choose something dangerous for once. Dante reached across the table, his hand covering hers. I can't promise you safe, he signed with his free hand. But I can promise I'll never lie to you. I'll never treat you as less than you are. And I'll protect you with everything I have. From what? Emma's signs carried a hint of amusement. I'm a teacher at a children's center. Who would I need protection from? You'd be surprised, Dante signed, his expression turning serious. People in my world look for weaknesses. If they know you matter to me, they'll try to use that. We just met. I don't matter to you. Don't you? His gaze was intense. I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since Friday. About your honesty, your strength, the way you talk about your students. You matter, Emma. More than is probably wise given how recently we met. Emma felt something shift in her chest, a warmth spreading through her that had nothing to do with the wine. This was dangerous. This was probably the most foolish thing she'd ever done. But as Dante's thumb traced circles on the back of her hand, as his signs flowed with the kind of fluency that came from years of practice, as he looked at her like she was something precious and powerful rather than fragile, Emma found she didn't care about the danger. Okay, she signed. I'm in. Whatever this is, I want to see where it goes. Dante's smile transformed his face, making him look younger, less dangerous, almost boyish in his pleasure. Good, he signed, because I have plans for us. What kind of plans? The kind that involve you learning that complications can be more interesting than safety. Emma laughed, the sound genuine and free. You're impossible. I'm honest, he corrected. There's a difference. They finished dinner trading stories about growing up with deaf siblings, about the challenges and joys of sign language, about the cultural nuances that hearing people never quite understood. The conversation flowed easily, naturally, like they'd known each other for years instead of days. When Dante drove her home later that night, walking her to her apartment door, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Can I see you again? Dante signed, standing in her hallway. Soon? Tomorrow? Emma signed back, then felt her cheeks heat. That's too eager, isn't it? I was thinking tomorrow, too, he admitted. So we're both too eager. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away, and kissed her softly. It was gentle, respectful, and made her entire body warm. When he pulled back, his hands moved through a final sign. Get some rest. I'll text you tomorrow. Emma watched him walk down the hallway, waited until he'd disappeared into the elevator before closing her door. She leaned against it, touching her lips, her mind spinning with everything that had happened. She was dating a man connected to organized crime. She was dating someone who'd essentially stalked her to her workplace. She was dating someone dangerous, powerful, and probably completely wrong for her. And she couldn't wait to see him again. 3 weeks into whatever she and Dante were building, Emma's life had developed a rhythm she never could have predicted. Her days still belonged to the children at Riverside Center, teaching ASL, developing curriculum, fighting bureaucratic battles for funding and resources. But her evenings had transformed into something else entirely. Dinners at quiet restaurants where Dante was always greeted with a mixture of respect and fear. walks through the city where his security detail followed at a discreet distance. Conversations that flowed seamlessly between sign language and spoken English, covering everything from philosophy to her students' latest achievements to the complex dynamics of his family's business. He'd been careful with her, respectful of boundaries she hadn't even known she needed to set. Their physical relationship had progressed, slowly. Kisses that made her forget her own name, touches that promised more, but never pushed. He seemed content to let her set the pace, to follow her lead even as his eyes told her he wanted much more. Emma had met his sister Isabella via video call, and the two had bonded immediately over their shared passion for deaf education. Isabella had been cautiously approving, signing to Emma privately that she'd never seen her brother so genuinely interested in someone. "He's different with you," Isabella had signed during one of their calls. "More present, more human. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." But as Emma got ready for dinner on a Thursday evening, pulling on a black dress that Dante had mentioned he loved, she felt an unease she couldn't quite name. Something had been off about his texts today, shorter than usual, missing his typical warmth. The knock on her door came 15 minutes early. Emma opened it to find not Dante, but Vincent, his head of security. A man she'd met several times but who'd never come to her apartment alone. "Ms. Chen," Vincent said, his expression grim. "Mr. Moretti asked me to bring you to him. There's been a situation." Emma's stomach dropped. "What kind of situation? Is he hurt?" "He's fine, but he needs you to come with me now. I'll explain in the car." Every instinct screamed that she should ask more questions, demand details, refuse to go anywhere until she had answers. But the genuine concern in Vincent's eyes made her grab her coat and purse. The drive to Dante's house in Greenwich Village took 25 minutes through evening traffic. Vincent explained in careful terms that there had been an incident at one of the family's properties, that Dante was handling it but wanted Emma somewhere secure. "Secure from what?" Emma demanded, her hands signing emphatically even though Vincent didn't understand ASL. She spoke aloud to ensure he comprehended. "What's going on?" "There's a rival family making moves," Vincent said carefully. "They've been testing our territory for weeks. Tonight they made their message more direct." "What does that have to do with me?" Vincent's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "They know about you, Ms. Chen. They know you matter to Mr. Moretti. And people in our world use leverage any way they can find it." The words settled over Emma like ice water. She'd known intellectually that dating Dante came with risks, but the reality of being considered leverage in someone's criminal enterprise was entirely different from theoretical danger. The house in Greenwich Village was a restored brownstone, elegant and understated from the outside, but clearly fortified. Security cameras covered every angle. The windows had reinforced glass. Men in dark suits stood at strategic positions around the property. Vincent led her through the front entrance into a living room that managed to be both luxurious and comfortable. Leather furniture, original artwork, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with what looked like actual books rather than decorator pieces. "Wait here," Vincent said. "He'll be down in a few minutes." Emma paced the room, her mind racing through scenarios. What kind of message had the rival family sent? Why did Dante need her here specifically? And why was her heart hammering more from worry about him than fear for herself? The door opened, and Dante entered. He looked exhausted, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. Shirt untucked, sleeves rolled up, hair mussed as if he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. But his eyes found hers immediately, and relief flooded his features. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight enough that she felt his heart racing against her chest. When he finally pulled back, his hands moved through signs with trembling urgency. "You're safe. Thank God you're safe." "What happened?" Emma signed back, her own hands shaking now. Vincent said something about a rival family and a message. Dante led her to the couch, keeping one hand in hers as if he needed the physical connection to reassure himself she was real. His other hand signed with controlled precision, though she could see the fury underneath. The Romano family has been pushing into our territory for months, he explained. Small things at first, trying to muscle in on our protection contracts, bribing our suppliers, spreading rumors to weaken our reputation. My father would have gone to war immediately. I've been trying to handle it through negotiation, through the traditional channels. What changed? They bombed one of our restaurants tonight. The place was closed, so no one was hurt, but the message was clear. They're not interested in negotiation anymore. His jaw clenched, and they left something at the scene. A photograph. Emma's stomach turned even before she asked, "Of what?" "Of you. Leaving the children's center." "From 2 days ago." Dante's signs were sharp with barely controlled rage. "They're telling me they can reach you anytime they want, that you're vulnerable, that I should back down, or they'll hurt what matters to me." The implications crashed over Emma like a wave. These people, dangerous criminals, had been watching her, had photographed her at her workplace, near children she was responsible for protecting, had threatened her to manipulate Dante. "I'm putting you in danger," she signed, the realization hollow in her chest. "Just by being with you." "No." Dante's signs were emphatic. "They're choosing to threaten innocent people because they're too weak to face me directly. This isn't your fault. But if I wasn't in your life, then I'd be less than I am now." He cupped her face with both hands, abandoning signing for the intensity of direct contact. "You make me better, Emma. More human. More connected to something real beyond power and territory. I won't give that up because some cowards think they can intimidate me." "What if they hurt me to hurt you?" Emma whispered, voicing the fear she'd been trying to suppress. "What if I become a weakness they can exploit?" "You're not a weakness." Dante's voice was steel. "You're a strength. And anyone who tries to touch you will learn exactly what that means." The promise in his words should have frightened her, should have made her recognize the violence he was capable of, the darkness that lived beneath his careful control. Instead, she felt protected, safe, cherished in a way she'd never experienced before. "What happens now?" she signed, needing to focus on practicalities before her emotions overwhelmed her. "Now you stay here, where I can protect you properly," Dante signed back. "I've already had Vincent collect clothes and personal items from your apartment. You'll have round-the-clock security. No one gets near you without going through multiple layers of defense." "For how long?" "Until I end this." His expression turned dark. "The Romano family thinks they can threaten what's mine and walk away. They're wrong." Emma should have argued, should have insisted she could take care of herself, that she didn't need to be locked away in his fortress. But the photograph of her leaving the children's center, the thought of these men watching her near her students, made her swallow her independence. "Okay," she signed, "but I need to work. I can't just hide here indefinitely. My students need me." "We'll arrange security for the center," Dante signed immediately. "Extra cameras, guards who understand they're protecting children as well as you. You can keep working, but not alone. Not vulnerable. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one." Over the next few days, Emma settled into an unsettling new reality. Dante's house became a luxurious prison, comfortable, secure, and completely disconnected from her normal life. He'd converted a guest room into a temporary bedroom for her, respecting her need for space, even as his eyes told her he wanted her closer. The security at Riverside Center increased dramatically. Two guards positioned outside, cameras monitoring all entrances, protocols for verifying anyone who entered the building. Margaret had been briefed with a carefully edited version of events, that Emma had received threats from a family member of a former student and needed temporary protection. Emma threw herself into work with desperate focus, using her students as an anchor to normality. But she felt the weight of the situation every time she saw the guards, every time she noticed Vincent's careful vigilance, every time she returned to Dante's house instead of her own apartment. On the fifth night, she found Dante in his study, reviewing security footage and talking in rapid Italian on his phone. He ended the call when he saw her in the doorway, his expression shifting from cold calculation to warmth. "Can't sleep?" he signed. "Can't stop thinking," she replied, entering the room and settling into the leather chair across from his desk. "This isn't sustainable, Dante. I can't live like this indefinitely." "I know." He closed his laptop and gave her his full attention. "That's why I'm ending it." Something in his tone made her pulse quicken. "What does that mean?" Dante stood and came around the desk, sitting on the edge so he faced her directly. His hands moved through signs with careful deliberation. "Tomorrow night, there's a meeting. Neutral territory, mediated by the Commission, the families who oversee conflicts to prevent all-out war. The Romanos have agreed to negotiate terms for backing down. You think they'll actually negotiate?" "No." Dante's expression was grim. "I think they're planning something, but the meeting gives me an opportunity to end this on my terms." Emma's hands trembled as she signed. "What are you planning to do?" "Whatever is necessary to make sure you're safe." He took her hands in his, stilling their nervous movement. "I need you to trust me, Emma. Can you do that?" She looked into his dark eyes and saw the man who'd learned sign language for his sister, who'd donated generously to her center, who'd been patient and respectful, even as his own needs were obvious. She also saw the man people feared, the heir to a criminal empire, someone capable of violence she couldn't fully imagine. Both versions were real. Both were Dante. "I trust you," she signed finally, "but I'm scared." "I'm scared too," he admitted, the vulnerability in his signs making her chest ache. "Not of the Romanos, not of the meeting. I'm scared of losing you. Of this life finally taking something from me that actually matters." Emma stood and moved into his space, her hands framing his face. "You won't lose me," she said aloud, needing him to hear the conviction in her voice. "Whatever happens tomorrow, you won't lose me." Dante kissed her then, and it was different from before. Not gentle or careful or restrained. This was desperate, claiming, a man reaching for something precious before it could be taken away. Emma responded with equal intensity, her hands tangling in his hair, her body pressing against his. They'd been dancing around this for weeks, both holding back for different reasons. But fear and adrenaline and the looming threat of tomorrow burned away all her careful restraint. "Emma," Dante murmured against her lips, his hands on her waist. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," she whispered. "I'm sure about you, about us, about everything that matters." He lifted her easily, carrying her out of the study and up the stairs to his bedroom. The door closed behind them, and for the first time since the photograph, since the bombing, since her world had tilted into danger, Emma felt safe. The next evening, Emma stood at the window of Dante's study watching the sunset over Greenwich Village. He'd left an hour ago for the meeting, surrounded by security, armed with both weapons and strategy. Vincent had stayed behind specifically to protect her, positioning himself and two other guards throughout the house. The security feeds showed empty streets, quiet perimeter, no obvious threats. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. She'd tried texting Dante twice, but he'd only responded with brief confirmations that he was fine, that the meeting was proceeding as expected. The messages felt stilted, wrong somehow, though she couldn't explain why. At 8 o'clock, Vincent's phone rang. She watched his expression change from neutral to alarmed, saw him gesture sharply to the other guards. "What's happening?" Emma demanded, moving toward him. Vincent turned to her, and the grim set of his jaw made her stomach drop. The meeting was a setup. The Romanos brought allies, the Calabrese family from Boston. They outnumber our people 3-1. "Where's Dante?" "Pinned down in the warehouse. He's calling in reinforcements, but—" Vincent's expression turned even more serious. "Ms. Chen, we need to move you. Now. If this goes badly, they'll come here next." "No." Emma's hands formed the sign with sharp emphasis even as she spoke aloud. "I'm not running while Dante's in danger. Where's the warehouse?" "You can't go there. That's exactly what they'd want. To draw you out. Use you as leverage." "Then what do you suggest?" "I hide while the man I love is outnumbered and potentially dying?" Her voice cracked on the word love, but she didn't take it back. Vincent studied her for a long moment, then made a decision. There might be another option. The FBI has been investigating the Romano family for months. If we give them evidence of tonight's ambush, armed assault with intent to kill, they could raid the warehouse, interrupt the whole thing. "You have FBI contacts?" "Mr. Moretti keeps channels open to law enforcement for situations exactly like this." Vincent was already dialing. "But it means exposing our operations too. It's not a decision I can make alone." "Then let me make it." Emma's hands moved with absolute certainty. "Call them. Save Dante. Whatever else happens, we deal with it later." Vincent nodded once and made the call. The next hour passed in agonizing slowness. Vincent coordinated with his contacts while Emma paced the study, unable to sit, unable to think about anything except Dante trapped in that warehouse. Finally, Vincent's phone rang again. He answered, listened, and his shoulders dropped with visible relief. "FBI raided the warehouse 20 minutes ago," he told Emma. "Multiple arrests from both families. Mr. Moretti is fine. Minor injuries, but fine. He's being processed as a witness right now." Emma's legs gave out. She sank into Dante's desk chair, hands shaking with relief so intense it felt like pain. "There's more," Vincent continued carefully. "The raid caught everyone. Romanos, Calabrese, and our people. This ends the immediate threat. But it's going to change everything. The FBI has evidence now. People will talk to avoid prison time. Our operations, our territory, all of it is compromised." "But Dante's alive?" "Yes, ma'am. He's alive." That was all that mattered. 2 hours later, Dante walked through his front door looking like he'd been through a war. Bruised face, blood on his shirt, exhaustion in every line of his body. But alive, whole, safe. Emma rushed to him, and he caught her in his arms, holding her with desperate strength. "I'm okay," he signed with one hand while keeping the other wrapped around her. "I'm okay. I called the FBI." Emma signed back, the confession tumbling out. "Vincent said it was the only way to save you. I'm sorry if I made the wrong choice. If I ruined everything, but I couldn't." "You made exactly the right choice." Dante pulled back enough to cup her face, his signs emphatic. "You saved my life. You saved dozens of lives tonight. But your business can be rebuilt. Will be rebuilt. Differently this time." His expression turned thoughtful despite the exhaustion. "Maybe this is an opportunity. The legitimate businesses stay. The rest? Maybe it's time to let that world go." Emma searched his face. "You'd do that? Walk away from the family empire? For you?" "Yes." Dante's voice was rough but certain. "I told you before. You make me want to be better. More human." Tonight proved that the old ways only lead to violence and loss. I don't want to build our future on that foundation. Our future? Emma's hands formed the question tentatively. If you'll have me. Dante's signs slowed, became more deliberate. I know it's too soon. I know the circumstances are insane. But Emma, I love you. I love your strength, your honesty, your passion for your work. I love how you see the world and how you make me see it differently. I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose you. Tears blurred Emma's vision as her hands moved through the response. I love you too. Even though you're impossible and dangerous and you turn my safe, predictable life completely upside down. I love you. Dante kissed her then, and it felt like a promise, like a new beginning built on honesty and choice rather than circumstance and desperation. When they finally broke apart, Emma led him upstairs to clean his injuries properly. As she worked, gentle and methodical, Dante's hands moved through signs between winces. What happens now? She asked. Now we figure out what comes next. Together. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. I'll cooperate with the FBI, give them what they need to take down the Romanos and Calabresi completely. My legitimate businesses stay clean. The rest? I'll find a way out that doesn't destroy everything my family built. And us? Us! Dante signed with absolute certainty. We build something real. Something that doesn't require you to live in fear or hide behind security. Something honest. I'd like that, Emma said softly. Six months later, Emma stood in front of the Riverside Children's Center watching the dedication ceremony for the new wing. The expansion had been funded by the Moretti Family Foundation, now focused exclusively on education and children's services. Dante stood beside her, his hand in hers, as Isabella cut the ribbon alongside Margaret. His sister had relocated to New York to help manage the foundation, bringing her expertise in deaf education to programs throughout the city. The FBI investigation had indeed changed everything. The Romano and Calabresi families had been decimated by prosecutions. Dante had cooperated fully, providing evidence that helped put away the leadership while keeping his own legal exposure minimal. He'd sold off the questionable parts of his family's empire and reinvested in legitimate businesses, restaurants, imports, real estate, all clean, all legal. It hadn't been easy. There had been threats from people who felt betrayed, legal battles over assets, tense negotiations to ensure his family's safety while dismantling the criminal enterprise. But Dante had navigated it all with the same strategic intelligence he'd once used for less noble purposes. And through it all, Emma had been there, living openly with him now. No more hiding, no more security details shadowing her every move. Just a normal relationship built on the extraordinary foundation of their first meeting. Happy? Dante signed, pulling her close as the dedication ceremony concluded and parents brought their children to explore the new classrooms. Incredibly happy, Emma signed back, though I still can't believe you turned your entire life upside down for me. You are worth it, he signed simply. You are worth it. Every day. Isabella approached them, signing with characteristic enthusiasm. The new sensory room is perfect. The kids are going to love it. You two did amazing work. We had help, Emma signed, smiling at Dante's sister. Your brother's foundation made it all possible. My brother's girlfriend convinced him to use his powers for good instead of evil, Isabella corrected with a teasing grin. That's the real miracle. Dante rolled his eyes but smiled, and Emma felt warmth spread through her chest. This was her life now. A man who learned her language, who supported her work, who'd literally dismantled a criminal empire because she'd asked him to build something better. As they walked back to the car later that evening, Dante's hand found hers. The simple gesture still made her heart flutter, even after 6 months of similar moments. I have something for you, he signed when they reached his car. He pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. Emma's breath caught. Dante. Before you panic, he signed quickly, it's not what you think. Or rather, it is what you think, but with no pressure. Just open it. Inside the box was a ring, simple, elegant, a single diamond set in platinum. Beautiful and perfect and terrifying. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight, Dante signed, his expression vulnerable in a way that still surprised her. I'm asking if you'd consider it. Eventually. When you're ready. Because I know what I want, Emma. I want forever with you. I want to build a life that's honest and good and full of the kind of love I didn't know existed before I met you. Emma looked at the ring, at Dante's hopeful face, at the future stretching before them. A future she'd never imagined when she was signing her frustrations to herself in a cafe, thinking she was invisible. Ask me again in 6 months, she signed, smiling through tears. And I'll say yes. Dante's face transformed with joy. He pulled her into his arms, kissing her with the kind of passion that still made her forget her own name. When they finally broke apart, Emma signed one more thing. I love you, even though you turned my safe life into an adventure. Maybe especially because of that. I love you too, Dante signed back. My unexpected miracle, my complete person, my everything. They drove home through the city, hands linked, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and chosen to build something real from the chaos. Emma had wanted someone who saw her as complete, who didn't treat her deafness as a deficit or a fetish. She'd found that in the most dangerous, impossible, perfect way. And she wouldn't change a single moment of it. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.